Hey guys, so I've kind of been taking y'all along my journey as I've recently become a new ambulatory wheelchair user. And if you're not familiar with that term, ambulatory means like I can use my legs, I can walk, but I still benefit from a wheelchair for my different chronic illnesses and things like that. So a lot of you have been asking, since I've kind of been sharing this journey, asking like, how did I know when to try a wheelchair and how did I know that would be the proper mobility aid to help me? And like, because honestly, as like chronically ill people, y'all know we always gaslight ourselves and assume that like we're being dramatic or like everybody, there's always someone who has it worse than us. There's always like, we always feel like our conditions are maybe not as bad as they actually are. I figured I'd go through kind of the thought processes that I had in the journey of me deciding to use this regularly, and hopefully that kind of helps you, because honestly these are the kind of videos that I was also looking for when I first was starting to think about using wheelchair and seeing if it would help me. So really, one of the big things was I realized that first of all, I was not going a lot of places in general because of my illnesses, and especially before they were diagnosed. After diagnosis it was easier, but they were still very unpredictable. And so I was noticing that like, first of all, my illnesses were stopping me from getting out and doing things that I would otherwise enjoy and that I would otherwise like to do. And along with that, I was having the thoughts of like, you know, I'd be laying on the couch and be like, I really want to go to the thrift store or wherever right now, but I am unsure of like the state of my body. And so I'm not sure if I should go or if I should stay home and rest. And I realized, I was like, if I could go out and I didn't have to walk, that would take the question out of it. I would feel totally fine and confident and stable in my body going out. And so that was one thing. And another thing is, you know, I've had episodes out and about, either by myself or with other family members and friends, where I had a flare up. And I had the thought like, oh my gosh, like, this would be so much better if I had a wheelchair and could get places while not making my symptoms worse. So those were two things. And then really the big thing is like, I got really tired of my husband having to pick me up and carry me places if I had a flare, or having to call him and or other family members for help if I was out alone and had a flare and it turned out an instance where I was not able to walk because of that flare. And another kind of unique tidbit for my illnesses specifically, one of the main things I use the wheelchair for is because I have POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So my heart rate, blood pressure, all the things just don't regulate properly. I always tell people, I'm like, my legs work, the rest of my body does not. And so with that, I also have a lot of chronic GI issues, which this might be slightly TMI, but we're sharing, it's fine. And so they tend to flare off of each other, which is not great. And so between like my POTS, then I have my celiac, my endometriosis, my IBS, these things. And usually if this flares, the POTS will also flare close behind it, or the other way around. If my POTS is flaring really bad, it is almost guaranteed to flare my like abdominal issues, which makes it a really big struggle, because if it was just the POTS, I'm like, whatever, I can lay down in the store, not ideal, but I don't really care. But the problem comes where with my GI issues, it is, I am flaring and I need to allow my body to rest so I don't pass out. But I also desperately need to be able to get to a restroom. Otherwise, there will be an accident. And both of those things have happened in tandem, which is the worst possible outcome. So that is another big reason why for me personally, it was really important for me to feel like I was able to, when I had those flares, I was able to safely get where I needed to go, whether that was the restroom, whether there was my car where I had emergency, you know, medications and can regulate better, all of those things. Because, and you know, like my POTS is so unpredictable. Sometimes I can go out for an hour or two and be walking around and not have a flare and do totally fine. And I'm like, okay, great. Like, basically not disabled. It's fine. And then the next day, with feeling the exact same baseline, I can go out and 5 minutes into a shopping trip, my heart rate can be skyrocketing and I'm all of a sudden flaring and on the floor. Otherwise, I will be on the floor forcibly by passing out. And so that unpredictability made it really hard to go out not being able to gauge how my body was and what was going to happen. And it made it really hard to go out confidently, especially alone. But even when I was with other people, it kind of felt like at any point things could go wrong. And I could be rendered immobile for whatever reason. And so the chair really keeps my whole baseline much steadier because the POTS doesn't flare as much when it only has to circulate from my feet here to my head here versus me standing up all the way and working by walking, moving around, all that. My body at its baseline stays much more stable. Not to mention also if my abdominal issues are acting up, those are also more stabilized by sitting versus walking. I can kind of bear with the pain and different things like that much easier. And then when I do flare, I am able to kind of actually just relax and I can get where I need to get. I can go where I need to. Gosh, sorry, my reflexes are hyperactive. I can go where I need to go and, keep all my medical supplies on me. And I may feel like crap and it's not going to be fun, but I am much more easily able to get myself stabilized again from here versus standing and walking around or, trying to find a place to lay down, trying to find a place like, can I get to the restroom? Then what if I need to get to my car? And it's just a lot of extra mental and physical strain that the wheelchair eliminates of, I'm out, this is going to help eliminate flares as a whole. And when I do flare, I am so much safer in my chair than just out having to rely on my body to be able to get me to one place or another versus having something else stable like my chair. And so this whole thought process and decision is going to be different for everybody. This is just my personal experiences and kind of the reasons that I chose to try out a wheelchair, and it has been phenomenal. Like, y'all have seen me gushing about how incredible my chair is and how it has impacted things that I didn't even realize would be impacted and things that I just kind of gotten used to, but then that now feels opened up again now that I feel safe and secure with my chair to go places. So it's really exciting. And so really, if you think that you could benefit from one, I always hear people say, they're like, if you're thinking about using a mobility aid, you probably already need it because normal people don't think about using mobility aids. And I went around New York with my husband in my wheelchair, and it's like, yes, like, were there some inconveniences for using a wheelchair versus walking around? Of course. But it just, the level of like small inconveniences of just like getting around and accessibility and stuff, for me in my experience was just not even comparable to how much additional safety and freedom and stability I felt in my body and in my mental state, feeling safe and having the chair. And so it just didn't compare. So that I think says a lot. If people are gonna complain about using a wheelchair because they think you don't need it, I'm like, you don't get a say in whether or not I'm using a wheelchair unless you are the person that is coming to rescue me from laying on the floor in the middle of the store or carrying me inside, like my husband and my family members have done. So you don't get it. And so don't let anybody make you feel bad. Do whatever you need to do to try and live the best quality of life that you can. These chronic illnesses and all this stuff that we have to deal with is already hard enough. Use whatever tools make that easier for you. And you deserve to have those tools and to do things that make things easier for you, even if you can suffer through it most of the time. So hopefully that answers that kind of question that I've been getting, and hopefully it also answers the question of why I use a wheelchair in the first place. So hopefully y'all have a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.